So and probably also the business model at the end.
Yeah.
Or at the beginning.
You mentioned agility a few times, also technological changes needed. I want to touch up on digitalization in the energy sector. Obviously, we see a lot of progress there. We see the Internet of Things. We see more sensor technology. We see a lot of big data being used. Do you think digitalization can be an accelerator for the energy transition?
Okay, let me go back to one of the things you said, a lot of progress. Okay. I see a lot of innovation. I'm not sure whether all the innovation is progress, because we are now already faced with companies that have data lakes. The dependency on software providers to make, digestible soup out of the data lake increases. Yeah. The technology required to manage all that data is enormous. The clarity in decision making for processes is very difficult, because you always find that, at least the situation today, is that many major or even smaller utility companies, but also energy, also oil and gas, anyone covering a full chain has these challenges of having many systems and not necessarily having all the right output, because data is nothing if you cannot turn it into information, and information is nothing if you cannot turn it into intelligence. The intel which we need for proper decision making, whether you talk about generation of information or data that, for example, no, help me. The basically surveillance from the air,
Yeah.
I forgot the name of the little toy.
Drone
the drone
technology.
Sorry, drone technology. Yeah. Okay, we have to cut it out. The drone. Okay, the drone technology. I think that is very valuable, but it still needs to feed into a system. The system needs to elaborate, needs to join conclusions, and then there is intel that basically says, maintenance, yeah, risk maintenance, or basically the type of maintenance that you do when there is an outage, and you base that on the data that is, for example, provided by drone surveillance, for example. And that is just one minor thing, and there are so many technologies out there that now can do asset control, verification, technical inspections, etc., that you really have to be, that the robustness of the systems is a challenge, and this is what we all already notice now. There is a big challenge, and digitalization at the end, I think it's unavoidable. It is important. It's there, but people have to get to agreement how that looks like, and there is insufficient agreement. There is a lot of, let's say, California in 1800 type of mentality. You go out there, you develop new things, you bring new tools to the market. People like the tools, and then let's see which one comes out stronger, and then others that have also come up will slowly vanish from the scene. So and I think that can be done a lot more efficient and without too much expenditure. If you, again, I use the word again, do the reverse engineering. How do you wish to make your decisions, and what type of data do you wish to make your decisions? What decisions are required in real time? What type of decisions can you make over a longer period? And how does the information come to you? And you take it from there, and you then basically reverse engineer it back into your assets to see how and what it is that you really need.
So what would be the right order then? Would you define your data strategy based on your maintenance approach, or would you base your maintenance approach on your data strategy?
Well, maintenance is just one part, right? There are many decisions that you need to take, especially when you're a major company or an integrated utility company or an integrated oil and gas company, or integrated energy company. Especially when companies are integrated, it is much more than maintenance only. You need to make decisions on many things. You need to make decisions on capital expenditure. You need to make decisions on decommissioning or commissioning of new assets or decommissioning of assets, divestments, whether some of your assets are still part of your belong to your core strategy, or do you want to change that? There are many questions that are to be answered, and it's definitely beyond maintenance.
Don't you think it's a matter of maturing, basically a matter of time before that solves itself out?
Yeah. Well, everything is a matter of time. So here we are. This one is also a matter of time. We'll sit this one through, right? One could argue, but that did not bring much good to many countries. If you look in the history and development of places like Venezuela, or even South America, if you take Venezuela, Argentina, but even states in the U.S., right? If we just sit it through and we just carry on with business as usual without proper planning, I don't think that time will, will resolve it, because it will end up in companies going broke. It will end up in outages. You need to plan your journey, yeah. And what I think is that a lot of companies, but not just companies, also people, it's micro and macro, do not plan their journey. I think you have heard me saying one time, if I'm in Southampton with my boat, I want to sail to New York, right? So I know where I want to go, to New York, and that is already very important. I know that I cannot fix my journey because I cannot control weather conditions. Well, at least I cannot. Maybe other people can, but I cannot control. So I know that that's the journey, that's the course, but events may come in and kick in and throw me off course. Mm-hmm. But at the end, I have my objective, I have my goal, and I will get there. And I see a lack of visionaries in the industry. I see a lack of visionaries in general. There are a couple, and they write books, and then that's it. But you don't find them in the top, let's say, top 100 blue chip companies in the world. You don't find real visionaries who can actually say, New York is where we go. We depart from Southampton. There's not too much out there that basically gives that type of idea. And if that isn't in place, then you work with people who have 3 to 4 year assignments and then go and do another job. People are not necessarily entirely committed. Yeah, in Shell we call it the hearts and mind. Mm-hmm. So you need both. Commitment doesn't come from the mind only; it also comes from the heart. And I don't see sufficient people, leadership, being committed with the heart to the objectives that they should be defining for themselves.
But in that context, wouldn't our New York at the moment be the Paris Agreement goals? And don't we just lack a captain to get us there, or multiple or basically we miss a whole crew? In your opinion, if I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, you do. No, so we don't lack the crew. You always have good crews. You always have good team members, but you need to have a game plan, right? And in the game plan, everyone has their position and they know what to do. And if everyone is committed with hearts and minds, mm-hmm. then you will get the result. Okay, that's fairly simple. I see. The objectives are clear, right? The energy transition is that you ask for the Paris Agreement. for me, the Paris Agreement and the energy transition is an objective that should catalyze sustainability. It is just one milestone, because at the end, it's not about the energy transition. It's not about climate or about environment alone. It is about creating a sustainable world, and these are critical factors on that path, but they're not alone, right? There is a lot more to look at. So if a certain objective that the whole world can stand behind, okay, it's about sense of urgency, right? So if we now would be invaded by a extraterrestrial fleet, I think the Russians and the Ukrainians and the Chinese and the Americans, they would all be focused on, mitigating the threat that basically is on all of us, right? And that's the sense of urgency. That's the sense of urgency that you need to mitigate the threats of the climate change and the environment.
Do you see a difference in sense of urgency between, let's say, the millennial generation and younger, and the generation that comes after that, generations that come after that?
I'm not entirely sure about the generations that come after that, because I'm a little bit disconnected. I have grandchildren, and when I talk to them, they have the same concerns as I had when I was 6, right? But the youngsters, the teenagers, are very concerned with what's happening in society, and that's not just what I notice. It's not limited to climate change and environment alone. Never mind Greta, Greta Thunberg. I think she is, she started off in ingenuity, and then, of course, she becomes like a used puppet as well. That's clear. And I don't count her as a representative for the youth anymore. The youth I see is the folks in the street that cannot do many things that I could do when I had their age. And they know, right? So, and therefore they are concerned. And by the way, I'm concerned as well for the same reason. And with the, let's say, the millennials, they also have these concerns because they are thinking about maybe having a partner, getting married, maybe children, the traditional things. And there are too many variables out there that makes it, that creates a lot of uncertainty. Climate is just one of them, but the current way governments are dealing with the corona situation is the same. It adds up to this one. So at the end, I am concerned, I am worried for the next generations, especially because we have this compartmental approach to key issues in the world.
What would your advice be to this concerned generation? If this was your last hour on Earth and this is your last message, what would you tell that up and coming generation? Those.
Okay. Well, when people say these things to you, if it would be your last hour, your last moment on Earth, in Italy we say knock on wood.
Apologies.
But I think the first advice is that be critical, be a critical thinker. Don't take anything for granted. Not the information that you are faced with. Make sure that you are comfortable with the things that you see and that you learn, and try to make decisions based on on as many parameters as you can get. Be concerned. Be concerned for the environment, and climate change. People say, we have to mitigate climate. No, we cannot mitigate climate change. We will not be able to mitigate climate change. The one thing that we have to do is getting plans in place for over 20, 30 years when climate changes and how that is going to affect the place where we live. You know, I was making a joke a couple of months ago. I was saying to people, yeah, I'm going to buy a piece of land in Siberia. Oh, Siberia, yeah, because I think my great-grandchildren will have a nice villa at the Riviera of of Siberia, because that's what climate change is going to cause, likely, if I believe the scientists, right? So rather than arguing and fighting over, climate change, yeah, we need to mitigate as much as we can everything that contributes to climate change. But actually, rather than the emission discussion, I would be even more focused on environment, but I said that in the beginning. So for me, environment is the key enabler to mitigating climate change and cope with the consequences of climate change. And rather than focusing purely on climate change and forget about the rest, the plastic ocean and not recycling enough and etc. I'm also concerned about our earth minerals. I'm concerned. If we want to, if recently we did a little bit calculation on the back of an envelope on what the environmental impact that Tesla really has. When everyone says, we need to drive with electricity, etc. Yeah, cool. But let's look at the environmental footprint of a Tesla. It's scary. It's really. I never thought that, but it has an impact, and there's so much more that has a negative impact on the environment. But we're all about climate change. It becomes the flavor of the day. It is now a commodity to talk about climate change and pay lip service to the objective. But at the end, the environment is the key, at least in my mind, the key to change.
Right, and how would you define the role of consultants? Because that's what we are. How would you define the role of consultants in that context?
Yeah, well, in that context, Okay, so as consultants, we are not driving the bus, right? So we are telling the bus driver what the best way is to drive the bus, and maybe change position, or maybe, well, they don't smoke anymore, but never mind the example of the bus driver. But we are not driving the bus. So we are advising the bus. If they ask us to drive the bus, we probably could drive the bus as well, and we probably would also invent a new route rather than the one that he was going on. To make it more efficient. As a matter of fact, consultants have been involved in inventing bus routing and train routing, but never mind. So there are three levels. One is strategic, the second is tactical, and the third one is operational. And all levels have a requirement for continuous improvement, have a requirement for reflection, have a requirement for external support. Why? Because consultants not just bring their skill set, but they also bring the experience of other clients into their work, right? So from a strategy perspective, helping clients mapping the strategy for the future is a role for consultants. How to convert strategy into operations is a role for consultants. Sorting out what digitalization really means to the industry is one. The energy transition, given the fact that that is a real topic and it's unavoidable, the role for consultants, at least our kind of consultants, would be to help companies identify or basically establish whether they are on the right track. Because if this is the track, and they are going here, the gap becomes enormous if there is no intervention at an early stage. So we are probably well positioned to reach out and help clients identifying where they are on the journey and help them correcting the journey, and not only saving zillions of euros or dollars, regardless, depending where you are, but also making the process more valuable and more efficient, and reaching the objective that at the end has been placed upon them.
Lastly, Ennio, because we're getting to the end of this podcast, where do you see UMS Group, or where do you see yourself in 3 years' time, looking from now?
Okay. Okay, I see UMS Group. UMS always, since its inception, I think UMS always had a unique position in the utility sector. I still think it's a unique company. There is no one alike out there with the knowledge that UMS can bring to clients. It's absolutely superb, and 30 years of benchmarking experience can also help companies to basically calibrate their journey when it comes to the energy transition, for example, but even for major transformation projects that some of these companies are unfolding. We can play the pivotal role to either be successful or to fail, right? And there's too much at stake for companies not having us. But yeah, I'll leave that to those companies. That's one. So I see UMS in growing and diversifying in the next 3 to 5 years. That's what I see with increased specialisms on our global learning consortia, which is the benchmarking peer-to-peer groups where they do not only benchmark but also exchange ideas with each other, and we facilitate that, and I see that growing significantly. On the consulting part, I see a lot of strategy requirements that require specific insights in order data, information, intel to get to define and help company strategies to execute the journey of the energy transition. And then there is operational. There are many operational issues out there that could be streamlined, whether it's in operations, maintenance, and and the networking. Yeah. So I think on all three levels, there is a lot of work to do for UMS, and probably also for many other consultants, but especially the requirement, the knowledge requirement, and what I would say the 30 years of intelligence that UMS has gathered has not been paralleled by anyone. So I think the leverage for UMS knowledge is there to bring that more prominently to the market. I see that as my task as well, by the way.
Thank you very much, Ennio.
My pleasure. Thank you for the interview.
It's been wonderful listening to you. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for kicking off this podcast series. And I think this is going to be a successful podcast show.
I sure hope. The idea is that we at the end, the idea is that we're going to have these executive interviews. This one is a kickoff, is an example. We need to see how it works out. But my idea is to have these high-level interviews with CEOs. And it's not just about the nitty-gritty operations. It's really about vision. I would like to hear the vision of those people who are leading companies and therefore leading regions, leading nations, leading people. It's leaders of the world, and it's not the ones that are elected. These are the companies that basically design our future, right? So it is important to know what those people think, and I would love to have these interviews with these people. And I, would like to launch this first series of 12 executive interviews, and this one is the kickoff, just to test it on myself first. So thank you again. The questions were excellent. You were well prepared. So
set the bar high.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the next episode.
Likewise.